3 years ago, the first case of a global plant virus was reported and it began to ravage most of our ecosystems. Eating food infected with the virus has caused severe autoimmune diseases, and the loss of plant life has reduced the amount of oxygen in the atmosphere by up to 10%, leading to an increase in the number of natural disasters around the world. The world's leading research laboratories have failed to develop a cure, and people are beginning to think that the planet is doomed. The only hope left is Project Gemini, developed by Dr. Stephen, about 2 ancient alien artifacts discovered by paleontologists who are sure that the objects are 4 billion years old, before there was any life on Earth. Stephen's team recreated the super tough materials the shells and engine are made of and made copies of them, and this engine has allowed them to build a ship that flies unmanned and is suitable for terraform. Finds planets. The area is meant to create life and serve for dozens of commands, which the team has finally finished decoding. It is also proof that life on Earth was created by aliens. A team of both doctors and military pilots will travel with a sphere several hundred light years away in the solar system testbed to create Earth 2.0. Stephen has a wife named Amy who does not want him to go on this mission. On the day of the launch, she still arrives at the base and tries to stop Stephen from leaving, but she is unable to make it in time and has to watch the ship leave the planet. When the ship leaves the atmosphere, an unusual crack appears on alien territory, indicating they may not be alone. Using alien engine technology, the ship opens a warp portal that allows them to jump across the universe. However, as soon as they make it to the other side, the systems signal an error. They have not reached the test, somewhere unknown. Stephen blames engineer Peter for this, claiming he made a mistake when entering the coordinates, so he has been relieved of his duties for now. Moments later, as Stephen rests, he continues to think of Amy, but also for the first time he activated the sphere, which allowed him to see some strange humanoid form that quickly disappeared. Later, Stephen asks the team to try to set the trajectory of the jump to find out where they are, but it was impossible to do because all their data was messed up as if they were in the 3rd and 4th dimensions. Have gone between. Meanwhile, Peter leaves his bunker and takes one of the security cameras so he can observe the sphere alone. At that point, the computer announces that someone has opened the repair airlock and an unknown object is approaching. To everyone's shock, they suddenly see a frozen Peter floating out. Dr. David thinks that Peter ended things because he could not live with his mistake, but Dr. Alyona refuses to believe it as she has known Peter for 8 years and he is not that kind of guy. Stephen scolds her for crying over a man who has ruined humanity and orders her to take over Peter's duties from now on. Later, David shares that he too almost ended things when his daughter died, but thought he could be useful instead. Now that the mission is over, he feels helpless again, but Stephen promises him that they will find a solution. At that point, the ship comes across a planet made of volcanic rock. It does not contain oxygen, but the external environment is not aggressive, which means that only a breathing mask is needed. Stefan feels this is the right choice to pursue his plan and is eager to land, but Captain Ryan stops him, saying that they haven't properly investigated the planet yet, so Stefan casually endangering the safety of the crew. Stephen doesn't care though, and reminds everyone that he's the one calling the shots here. The team will land on a shuttle while Officer Richard remains on the mothership. As the shuttle gets closer to the planet, they encounter a very aggressive storm, so they have to activate the braking thrusters to slow their fall. This will also use up all their fuel and prevent them from turning back, but this is their only chance for survival. As the shuttle hits the ground, the crew bails out, and Stephen dreams of the time he gifted Amy a bracelet made from a special part of the old shell. Trying to connect the two most important things was. Moments later, the crew wakes up and immediately goes back to work. The shuttle is not seriously damaged, but fuel is low and they are stuck here. Stephen doesn't see a problem with this because they came to stay for 4 years, and even though they didn't land where they wanted, they are sure they can use one of the giant caves as a dome for the sphere. Launched in. Meanwhile, in the shuttle's hidden corridors, a strange goo falls through the mothership's walls. Richard inspects the other rooms and finds the missing camera as well as this goo. Once everyone is properly acclimated, the crew takes the sphere to the nearest cave and successfully activates it. They then return to the shuttle to begin collecting data, but their work is interrupted by a riot announcing martial law is in place in the station. To explain his decision, he shares some files that Richard sent him while the doctors were working. This is a video in which Peter is recording himself while he is inspecting the shell so that he cannot be accused of mistakes. Later, when he opens the engine door, he finds something moving in the shadows that suddenly pounces on him and kills him before throwing him overboard. The camera cannot capture the size of this creature, but Richard explains that he has checked all the footage and that the alien has been with him since leaving Earth as it traveled inside the sphere like a Trojan horse. This probably caused the failure during the jump, but it is no longer on the original ship. It has moved with the shuttle to the planet. Richard can track it down as the alien causing electromagnetic field interference, explaining the poor recording. The discussion is suddenly interrupted by David, who is noticing something strange on the system. Sphere is running a different program than the one they uploaded. Stephen wants to return to the sphere, but Ryan stops him, reminding him that he will not allow her to lead him anymore and accusing him of keeping secrets. Ryan reveals that Richard also found footage of Stephen seeing that strange shape on Earth months ago, so he knew there was a possibility of danger and yet didn't tell anyone, meaning Peter his death is his fault. Hurt by this accusation, Stephen leaves the room, thinking about all the work he's done on this project. Stefan was not sure that David should have come with them as he was still grieving, but David reassured him that he was fine and wanted to make a better Earth to prevent other children from dying like his daughter. Moments later, Stephen meets David and asks him to sneak out with him through the airlock to check on the sphere. David doesn't want to disobey Ryan, but Stefan changes his mind after reminding him of his daughter and the future of the planet. As they arrive at the cave, they notice that the sphere is creating an alien life form faster than it is creating life on Earth because someone readjusted the settings. Stephen immediately begins working on the setting of the area, to David's delight and neglecting to discuss things with everyone. At that moment, David notices on his radar that the alien is getting closer, so he fires a warning shot to try to spook Stephen. Stephen responds by drawing his weapon, but before things can get ugly, he sees the aliens already entering the cave. When Stephen grabs a piece of the sphere to take with him, the two men begin to run, noticing that the creature is getting closer because of its shadow and noise. When they exit the cave, they finally get a full view of it, but not before the creature can attack them. They manage to return to the shuttle and close the airlock. David tells Stephen off for risking his life, but Stephen reminds him that this fear is more important than the next time he won't hesitate to shoot. Ryan then arrives to scold Stephen as well, and when Stephen explains that they will have to use force to stop him, Ryan punches him. Suddenly the computer sounds an alarm to tell the crew that the integrity of the module has been compromised. Alyona leaves her room to investigate the issue and is suddenly pulled back into an isolated area by a lot of hooligans in the corridor. It is Frank who informs him that the alien has blown a hole in the lower deck and is now in the lander. The pair carefully make their way to a hideout in the lab where it's getting too hard to breathe. In a flash, the lights go out and a strange noise is heard from behind the plant units. This means the alien is here, so Frank pushes Alyona out of the room, and as she runs down the corridor she can hear Frank screams while the alien kills him. Alyona meets the rest of the team in the control room and tells them what happened, prompting Ryan to yell at Stephen for bringing the alien back with him. The creature entered inside by making a hole in the hall. It has also damaged the generator and the cameras are not working, so they have lost contact with Richard and have no view of the rest of the ship. Their only solution is to go to the backup generator and reconnect everything, which the creature cannot track down, which is extremely difficult to pull off, prompting Stephen to voluntarily go because it is his fault. With his weapon, Stephen carefully makes his way to the generator and manages to bring back the communication system. The team can now track the alien and warn Stephen that it is near it, but as Stephen tries to leave, he begins to hear noises. Luckily, Ryan thinks fast and uses a metal rope to make it back to the control room. The team then hatches a plan to get the aliens out of the ship. While Stephen waits outside to play bait, Alyona opens the airlock, then opens the door to the lab, running to hide in another room as the alien comes out. The creature quickly begins to make its way through the airlock, but when Richard tries to start the engine to burn it down, he cannot because the alien is interfering with the signal. Stephen runs for his life and Alyona comes to his aid, but at the same time the alien comes out and Richard gains access to the engine. Stephen and Alyona run back inside when it is hit by the fire, but it is not enough to kill it, and it tries to reach Stephen, who is being dragged inside by David. As they close the door, the alien's tentacles injure David's arm, releasing the creature's body inside. While the beast returns to the cave, Ryan closes the airlock and the others close the hole again. Moments later, the team finds Frank's body, and while Alyona decides to end things for herself due to her grief, Stephen thinks about Amy again. She had tried to convince him that she was working on a vaccine, but more importantly, that she was pregnant. Yet this was still enough for Stephen to stay because saving Earth was more important than his personal life. David goes to the lab to get his wound bandaged, and Stephen brings a tentacle to study it. He learns that the creature is a biorobot made of the same material as the sphere, meaning that the sphere's goal has always been to create these animals. Stephen informs David that the tentacles have infected him with bacteria with a very powerful defense mechanism, meaning that his blood now holds the key to creating a vaccine to save Earth. As Stephen makes a cut on the tentacle, the lights go insane and he remembers the image he saw back on Earth, implying that the alien is a transponder and thus his race colonizes planets. Stephen decides they need to kill the alien and restore the sphere's settings, but Ryan locks him in the lab and tells him he is under arrest for risking everyone's lives. Ryan explains that life is pointless for Stephen and David agrees, saying Stephen only wants to play the role of hero and has never cared for humanity. This leads Stephen to remember his last argument with Amy, who accused him of having a guard complex, before throwing away her bracelet. Stephen continues to do his research in the lab and derives a theory that Richard confirms when he examines the travel log. He didn't jump from space, he jumped from time. They are still on Earth, but 4 billion years ago, before life existed, and the clones they brought to the region are what one paleontologist will discover later in the future. Ignoring the fact that David's wound is getting worse, Stephen is incensed when he learns that the shell fragment he grabbed earlier is the one he uses to make Amy's bracelet in the future. So he proceeds to write a message on it to teach Amy how to activate it, the area they left behind. Meanwhile, in the present, Amy is in Stephen's lab trying to deal with the news that the team failed their mission. Suddenly, Richard brings worrying news to Stephen. Ryan is preparing the explosives to detonate the shells and has turned off his radio to avoid complaints. Stephen asks Richard to reopen the airlock so he can get out, and as he finds Ryan with the bombs, he begins to explain that they could have planned better. Their conversation ending with one shot is interrupted, which kills Ryan out of the blue. It is David who has escaped the airlock and gone into range due to the infection, leading him to believe that the aliens have chosen him to help. This makes things right as the humans are malfunctioning from the field. To distract David, Stephen throws Leona's Rubik's Cube over the wall and shoots at her, causing David to flee. Later wounded, Stephen activates the bomb before going outside to set up a flare to attract the alien's attention. Stephen tracks her down to the control room and locks her in there, but as she runs down the corridor, David opens fire on her and pushes her into hiding. At that moment, the alien breaks down the door and approaches Stephen, who manages to knock it off with a swift shot. The alien pursues Stephen as he begins to flee, and when he returns to the control room he is confronted by David, who tries to kill him. His actions are halted by the alien appearing and killing it first, giving Steven a chance to escape outside the shuttle, before the bomb finally detonates and kills the beast. Steven passes out for a few seconds and is awoken by Richard trying to contact anyone alive. Richard wants to come rescue her, but the storm is too strong and Steven tells him to stay back while he returns to the cave to use the sphere. Meanwhile, in the present, Amy finds her bracelet again and finally notices the message, so she uses it to activate the sphere as well. At that moment, husband and wife are reunited in a mixture of past and present, and Steven quickly shares the formula for the vaccine before professing his love just as the connection ends. Stefan dies in the cave due to lack of oxygen and Amy cries when she realizes she is a widow. Now, several months later, Amy is raising a very healthy baby thanks to the vaccine, which is now helping to make the Earth a better place. If you like this video, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notification, so you can see more videos like this. Thanks for watching.